Hey everyone, today I wanted to go over the new and interesting rumors that we're getting regarding the next mainline Persona game, which is of course Persona 6. A lot of people were expecting this one to be at the very least revealed sometime this year, since it has been quite a while since the 5th Persona game was released, and of course Persona 5 Royale coming out for multiple consoles just last year. So pretty much the timing seemed to be right that we're getting ready to see more information, or at the very least the first glimpse of information regarding Persona 6, Atlus's main RPG Japanese franchise. But as of right now, it seems to be like that is not going to be the case, since it turns out, according to at the very least one trusted leaker that originally put out the information regarding the original Persona 3 remake, is that it seems to be like the game was internally delayed, at the very least on Atlus's side of things, and as of right now it doesn't seem like it's going to be releasing at the very least in 2023, but there is a chance that we might be able to see it heading forward into later in the year. At the same time, we also seem to be getting some information regarding, at the very least, some suggested information on what platforms it should be available on. Remember that pretty much every mainline Persona game so far has launched on PlayStation first. The originals, Persona 3 and 4, launched on PS2, eventually made their way to the Vita on different formats, and with 5, it launched on PS3 and PS4, and many years later, we finally got it on PC, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch. But essentially what we got here is that I Am a Hero 2, that seems to be the handle of this leaker who originally leaked Persona 3 Remake, was simply asked if there were any sort of updates regarding the upcoming information regarding Persona 6. And according to him or her, I'm not necessarily too sure, they mentioned that absolute zero chance 6 releases this year. It was delayed internally just yesterday, so this would have been as of pretty much late February or February 27th, somewhere around there. And they mentioned that there is roughly a time frame, but they cannot share. There could be a release of a remake first or the other game, but I'm not privy to that information. If the teaser is at a Sony's next show, I'll know beforehand and can confirm. So there's a couple of things here to take away. First and foremost, if the game has been delayed but officially hasn't even been revealed in the first place, not necessarily that big of a surprise. The game has been already being worked, most likely at the very least in the early stages of it, for almost 5 years now at the very least. And you know, that wouldn't be much of a surprise if it gets internally delayed. That happens all the time, especially if they haven't necessarily shown anything ahead of time. What is interesting here is that they mention that there could be a release of a remake first. This is of course referencing to the Persona 3 remake that has been rumored so far. If you haven't necessarily been paying attention, when Persona 3 essentially the remaster, you know, of that most recent one that we got on Xbox and Nintendo Switch, PlayStation consoles, and PC Steam was released, there were mentions of course, this Persona 3 remake being rebuilt essentially from the ground up for a modern audience. Yes, they released pretty much the old version to kind of get money out of that, but of course, a brand new built from the ground up experience of Persona 3 would go a long way, since that was probably the oldest of all the modern, let's say, Persona games, 1 and 2 being very different from 3, 4, and 5, and most likely the one that needs the most amount of love. Therefore, that game getting touched up, hopefully not censored or modernized in any awful, meaningful way like many remasters end up getting nowadays, but hopefully, you know, that game getting a modern version of that would go a long way alongside that. So they do make mention that the remake could come first, presumably that is what they're referring to, or other games. So essentially a new game that we don't necessarily know anything about. Maybe another spin-off, maybe another dancing game, something along those lines. Obviously the Persona IP has been very popular, therefore, you know, another entry, maybe even a remaster of Persona 1 and 2 or something like that, you know, could end up seeing the light of day sooner than we expect. At the same time, they also mentioned that if the teaser is at a Sony next presentation show, they will know ahead of time. So this of course confirms that Sony would most likely be the ones to reveal this game. That wouldn't come to too much of a surprise for anyone, like I mentioned before. since every mainline Persona has launched on PlayStation consoles first, and that's pretty much been the way that it has been throughout up until recently, where now the game has kind of become a little bit more multi-platform, at the very least for 5 Royale and Scramble as well. So we could be seeing here another PlayStation Sony timed exclusive deal, something that we have been seeing lately with a lot of like the Square Enix games, for example, where they're launching on PlayStation first. There is a lot of turmoil right now regarding Final Fantasy 16, for example, launching first on PlayStation 5 and then eventually making its way to PC, which just recently Tetsuya, I believe, mentioned that it won't be coming to PC after 6 months, as it was originally revealed. Sony most likely paid exclusivity for just 6 months, but the port of the PC version will most likely take a little bit longer. I don't necessarily know why, since these games are made for PC in the first place, and then they're downgraded to console experiences. So, it wouldn't make much sense, but of course, that is just the power of, the Sony influence and the money of exclusivity that speaks volumes when it comes to these Japanese developers and the allegiances that they have with Sony and PlayStation's end. So it does leave a lot of the, let's say, modern Persona players wondering just where would this Persona 6 eventually would be coming, whether it is to Xbox, whether it is to Nintendo Switch, whether it is to PC Steam. Would it be a launch day and date experience? Would it be one of those where, like, yes, PlayStation 5 exclusive for 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, whatever the case is, and then eventually Atlus, opens the floodgates and put the games on pretty much every other console available at that point in time, presumably 2025, 2026, by very, in a long time from now, type of standards, which is, something that players wouldn't necessarily be too happy to see, but of course has been the MO as of, recently when it comes to Atlus. They make a game for one console and then they make it available at a later date on others. So that seems to be probably the path that this Persona 6 game is going to end up taking. And if at the very least we do end up seeing it, it will be most likely a very short teaser, nothing heavy, no real, long stretches of gameplay or anything like that. It would just be, a cinematic trailer with, in-game cutscenes, maybe animated cutscenes if they choose to go that route. A lot of games are now doing in-game cutscenes, and presumably Persona will keep doing that. Will go on to keep doing that, since the games, at the very least, Persona 5 Royale looks very good enough as it is on its in-engine experience. Therefore, they most likely do cutscenes in that regard, and it ends up looking, just like as you would expect. No more animated cutscenes or anything like that, like we have seen in previous Persona games. But that's about all the information that I have for you guys today. I'm going to be leaving a link in the description below for all of the original sources of this information. Plenty of them, Resetera, and different articles as well, referencing to these details regarding this potential internal delay of Persona 6. Most likely not dropping this year, but at the very least, hopefully, being revealed later this year. If you're brand new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up. And as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya.